My name is Michael Kane, and I'm with Kane Mills Media in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And tonight I have Michael Weber, the Chief Operating Officer of FITE TV. Michael, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, and it's actually morning where I'm at right now.
Where in the world are you?
So FITE TV's other co-founders and our technology is all Sofia, Bulgaria. So I'm sitting in my hotel room in Sofia, Bulgaria at 3 in the morning right now.
It is much appreciated. Thank you so much for coming. It's very, very appreciated. Just want to get started with some of the basics. What was it like growing up? Were you an athlete, a theater arts person, business guy?
I wouldn't say as a business guy or a theater art person. Athlete, yes. Very into swimming. Played high school football. I'm so old, and this is legit. I actually wore a leather helmet in high school as a freshman in high school in the early 70s. My school was very poor. We had to be one of the last schools in the country wearing leather helmets. And ran track. My father was a high school athletic director. And I actually, really thinking back to your life and stuff, I really got started in sports, even I guess somewhat from a business standpoint. When I was like in 8th grade, I was the kid that called the high school scores into the newspapers. For the younger people in here, there was not internet in 1971.
Right.
And we had to call them in, had to spell all these long German names, which is where I'm from in Western Ohio, to the local newspapers who, scored this many points, had this many rebounds and so forth. And this is a good way to introduction. And in some ways, that's why I still do yet, and also, as a, 13, 14-year-old, I'd work as a spotter at the high school football games for the PA announcer and radio announcers and stuff like this. So from that standpoint, I was involved at an early age, but, I was no star athlete, but I was very much a part of the, playing football and running track and swimming and stuff, but still, it was the foundation I built.
And how did you decide to take up marketing as a career?
Sort of fell into it a little bit. I sort of a weird, no, not too weird, but my undergraduate degree is actually in recreation management. And it is exactly what it sounds like. I have a lot of recreational time when I was in college in the 70s. And I became a YMCA director for 4 years, which I enjoyed. I was in fantastic shape, taught fitness classes, ran youth leagues. I was always in organization sports and stuff, but you made no money. I worked my way all the way up to making $15,000 a year. And I decided to go back to graduate school. I have a master's in sports administration from Ohio University, which is over 50 years old in sports administration, and usually regarded as one of the best sports ad programs to go to. And from there, I worked at Davidson College as a sports information director. So that's where the PR aspect turned, which PR lends itself into marketing. And I was very fortunate after I finished up internships and stuff with Davidson College and Ohio University. A guy named Basil DeVito, who was a fellow OU sports ad graduate, was vice president of marketing at WWF at the time.
Oh,
and
wow.
Contacted the professor of my program and said, hey, do you got anybody who knows a little bit about marketing who might be an intern? I was recommended. We hit it off, and away we went in PR and marketing so forth back right prior to WrestleMania 2 for people who follow wrestling fairly closely.
Oh, man. Now, what about pro wrestling did you know, and what did you have to get used to?
I knew zero. I heard of Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
Growing up in Western Ohio, ironically, you mentioned you have relationships OVW. Al Snow's a very good friend. And as a matter of fact, him and me are actually born in the same hospital in Lima, Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
He's a couple years younger than me, but he's another Midwest guy. I think he did start his wrestling career probably about the same time I went to grad school. And I really did not know anything about wrestling, but I knew wrestling, know how to promote. I figured, well, shoot, I could probably learn a few things there. And obviously I did. And in the time period I went to WWF, there was only 60 employees at that time, prior to WrestleMania 2. So what was fantastic about that relationship, I got involved in everything from the beginning, how home video, how licensing, magazines, all the ancillary ways that you drive revenue for an event, of course, ticket sales. And back then we actually did closed circuit and some of the very, very first pay-per-view events, which fast forward 40, almost 40 years later, that's what my company's based off, is pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So it was probably one of the best bases I could ever hope for to start a career.
As an aside, I held the camera at OVW for about 6 months, and I think I made Al Snow seasick for at least 3 of those. So Al, if you're out there, I apologize. Just want to thank you for letting me hold the camera, but sorry about the seasickness. When you were at WWE, and as you started to see how that team came together, what were some of the essentials of building a good team that you kind of took with you?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is, so I was the first person Basil hired. And I think Basil's a very well-known name throughout the history of WWF. He still, I think, has some type of consulting relationships with them yet. But he did something that I am doing quite a bit, especially when I went to WCW in the 90s. He hired OU sports ad graduate students. When I was there, easily, he must have hired 8 to 10. And when I was at WWF, I might have had 15 people who had gone through the program. Essentially, was great for it is a great pre-screening process for hiring people. And some of the people, I gotta say, I probably worked with 30, 40, maybe 50 OU sports ad graduates over the years. And we only had 1 or 2 who never, just was disappointed it didn't work out. Almost every one of them become very successful. And some of them are now some of the most senior executives in sports still, 30 years later. So it really took the trial and error out of way you hire people. And I thought that was a very important takeaway I had from the beginning.
Now, talk a little bit about after WWE going to WCW. What were some of the things that changed? How
well,
was that
actually,
different?
I was there's a little window of almost 3 years between WWE
please explain that. I'm sorry.
WCW.
Go ahead. I
So,
apologize.
as you know, with your history, WrestleMania 4 and 5 was Trump Plaza WrestleMania events in Atlantic City. I got to know the Trump people, and I actually went to go work for Trump in '89, right after WrestleMania 5, as a marketing manager, I believe it was, in something called Trump Sports Entertainment. And what we did is buy all rights to boxing events. So we were responsible for not only, selling the tickets, but also, the pay-per-view distribution. So always stayed with the pay-per-view. And I was only a year there, but it was invaluable. Matter of fact, I saw a guy who I did business with back then, a gentleman named Brad Jacobs, who's the COO of Top Rank. I just saw today, prior to the thing, he's elected to the Boxing Hall of Fame. And he worked for USA Network at that time when they had boxing. And so there's people I dealt with back in 1990, I'm still doing business with yet now. And it's quite interesting and good experience. But then at that time period, Trump opened the Trump Taj Mahal. If you're from the East Coast, you probably remember it. And it's hard to believe the way casinos are now, but in 1990, there's only casinos in Atlantic City and Las Vegas in the entire country, which is almost inconceivable now, but that was it. And so, we always did great events from the Atlantic City Convention Center and so forth. But then, again, is Ohio University connection. I left there when they closed down my division because they were losing so much money on the opening of the Taj Mahal in the spring of 1990. I went to work for a company at that time called SRO Pace. Is now called, through about 7, 8 different ownerships since then, Feld Motorsports.
Okay.
And it was monster trucks and supercross. And I worked for a gentleman named Jim Kaler, who also happens to be a Ohio University graduate, who actually I've seen as recently as 2 weeks ago. He's now runs the sports information program for Cleveland State. Not sports information, sports administration. So, still, and he's been a professor in sports administration for probably the last 25 years now. When he left SRO Pace about the same time I did, he went to be VP of marketing at Cleveland Cavaliers. So anyway, again, the strong OU relationship. We had quite a few OU sports ad graduates working there yet. Some of them are still there that we hired back in 91, 92. Great experience. As you would guess, parallels between monster truck racing and wrestling was there. Yeah. It was a good experience, but I did like wrestling a lot. I liked the arenas. I had made a lot of friends in the business and stuff. And so I went back to wrestling in '92 as their head of PR, which then turned into head of marketing about a year or so later.
In your experience over those two companies in particular, but you obviously you have other wrestling experience too. What makes for great sports entertainment?
Wow.
What are some of the core essentials? Yeah.
Well, it goes both ways. And this can be comparable to where AEW is at nowadays. First is obviously the talent, the wrestlers, the people in the ring. Is very important. You want guys who good athletes, represent the product well, represent the brand, who bought in on the logic and direction, but also then the TV production. And I think that is so underrated. I learned so much. I mean, one of the guys we worked with a lot at WWF there in the 80s was Dick Ebersol. And as a young guy throughout graduate school, having that person serve as a mentor to work with and understand TV production. I never want to produce wrestling or even television, but I executive produced quite a bit. So I know the right people to work with.
Right.
And I've had a lot of opportunities there. So what the term I guess they use a lot now is a learning tree. Sitting on a Dick Ebersol learning tree was incredible. When I went to WCW, there was a few people like Craig Leathers and Rob Wright, who some people might remember Craig Leathers' name. He was a executive producer through WCW, but I actually first met him when he worked at WWF in the 80s. He's about the same age as me. We were sort of parallel times there back in the 80s and 90s. And they had, a very well-produced television show. They had executives. Keith Mitchell's another person I met back then who I've crossed paths with Keith for the last 30 years now. And he's been, well, I guess he's actually officially retired now. I might do that someday. But he's had done it for over 40 years. So, and when we get talking about FITE, there's a lot of parallels there. Continuity, having the same people running it, the same teams working together. And, going fast forward to today, AEW, one of the reasons there, and I think it's underrated, one of the reasons of their tremendous success out of the box is they had to spend zero time trying to figure out how to do TV production. Because I go in there, every single person there I've worked with at TNA Wrestling, Impact Wrestling. Yeah. And the ones I didn't work with there, I worked with at Ring of Honor. So they have such an experienced crew. And Keith Mitchell is actually, the catalyst of pulling that all together initially. Like I said, he's since retired about a year ago, but they still have quite a few guys there, from Andrew Thomas, their producer, to Greg Warner, who's heads of all their operations. And I mean, that's a traveling show,
When they showed the control room for CM Punk's entrance, it was what made me feel really great about it was that it wasn't a bunch of young kids just hanging around, screwing around. It was professional men in their 50s and 60s who knew exactly what to do, who are hammering point by point. And it was just pure competence and excellence. And it was just great to watch.
The director, Tim, can't remember his last name. I feel bad about it. Tim, who I'm good friends with, even though I can't remember his last name. This happens when you get in your middle.
It's 3 a.m.
Yeah, that too. Tim, I'll remember as soon as I get off there. Tim, anyway, who's our director. I mean, I first met him when he shot the Brother Love segments at WWF in the 80s. So very experienced. And for many years when he was at TNA, he also was directed all the Baltimore Orioles baseball games. So again, experience, continuity, working relationships. That's a key to success.
I again, in awe of the level of comfort and just pure know-how, just pure execution. It was very cool.
But you know what? You don't learn that without practice.
No.
And these guys practice.
Now,
because I've seen too many productions over the years, and where you throw a bunch of people together, and it's a catastrophe for the first several shows and stuff. But you go to an NFL game and watch go in their trucks and their productions the exact same way. All those guys have been doing it for 30 and 40 years.
I imagine in a lot of ways it's a lot like a kitchen at a 5-star restaurant, where guys progressively work their way in and get really good at something, and then get really good at another thing and then earn their way up.
Yeah, and you know, especially in case of AEW and WWF or WWE at this time, it's a family. NASCAR is the same way. You're leaving your family for 5 days, 4 days every week to go somewhere and work together. And the only people you have to, you know, you're not going home to your wife or kids. You're going home to the hotel room and maybe having a beer and dinner with some of your fellow workers. And it's a real camaraderie that they have in that industry.
I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to get right to FITE.
Sure.
The question is, there was a lull period for pro wrestling as a business in the early 90s. Did you anticipate that it would hit the heights that it did during the Monday Night Wars?
God,
Or
no.
what?
If you asked me in 1992, 93, when we couldn't figure out how to put a couple hundred people for free into center stage to get people to watch shows, and we were working events with like 200 people there, our house shows, touring house shows at that time. If you had told me we're going to put 40,000 in Georgia Dome, you know, less than 5 years later, I'd tell you you're smoking dope. I mean, it was this, and I got to tell you, it was one of the wildest, and I don't think I'll ever duplicate such a quick rise that we was involved in. I mean, I'm sure you heard the stories there in the early 90s.
Yeah.
That company was within days, hours of being closed down. We would not have been surprised to see chains on the doors coming in there. And frankly, Ted Turner personally saved it because it was not a popular product within the Turner world and family, but Ted liked us.
Yeah.
And there's a few relationships there that Ted had, like Jim Barnett, which is a name I think a lot of people have heard before, was there when I came in there. He had a long-term personal relationship with Ted. And he had that passion. And that's what kept it alive. And, you know, then Eric Bischoff came in and he had a vision and really started going from one way to another and start bringing the big names in there. But actually, one of the reasons I went to work there is, and this is pre-Eric, they had just hired Jesse Ventura. And I had worked with Jesse quite a bit. It's okay, they're bringing Jesse in and they got Jim Ross there and Tony Schiavone. Okay, they're committed there. And I knew who Sting was, but I got to know him there. So, okay, there's some good stuff here, but it was a struggle there for a good 2 years, 3 years before things exploded in the way they did. But yeah, I couldn't have foreseen that. That's for sure.
And y'all had caught the tiger by the tail too. I mean, incredible run.
It was fun. It was real fun, fast moving. You know, I went from, you know, staff of 1 or 2 to 23 or 24, I think, over a period of a few years, grew it. You know, took our magazine in-house, our licensing program I helped start, which was, and actually the gentleman who worked with me, a guy named Casey Collins of our licensing program, which we really took off. He's like the general manager of Hasbro Toys now. So,
oh my God.
So, but I think it was the second job he ever had. He was probably in the mid-20s and stuff, but we were fortunate. You know, another guy, again, I think you know your history. You probably remember how important back in the 90s 900 phone lines were.
Yes, I do.
And Gene Oakland was our guy, good friends of Gene, rest his soul. Too many of these people I worked with aren't with us anymore. But we had a guy named Tom Hunt who ran that. And again, a bright, young, aggressive guy, very dedicated to it. And he's now senior vice president for the Sacramento Kings NBA team. So I don't know if I was lucky or had the right people or it was a good launching ground, but it's so rewarding seeing some of the people we had on our team back there and how very successful they are in the sports industry at this point in time.
Yeah. You talked about your introduction to platforms. At what point does the kernel for FITE start to enter your head?
That's a good question. I have talked about this a few times there. It must have been about 1995 or so. We had a young guy named Bill Cunningham work for us, and we had brought him in to work with our website. Well, actually, he started with pre-website. I think people remember him as Prodigy and
CompuServe
AOL,
and AOL.
CompuServe.
Oh, yeah.
So AOL did a deal with WWE. We did a deal with CompuServe. Bill was brought in, and Bill, when I say young, I think it was like 22 or 23, came in and with I listened to him essentially. The only thing I was really smart about, I wasn't smart about the internet. I was smart enough to listen to young guys like him, who was brilliant. And we worked with them, and then we started building our website. And then we start working with a company owned by Mark Cuban, pre being purchased by Yahoo. And we started to stream the play-by-play audio. And I remember how excited we were. We had 200 people listening to our show at the same time.
Oh my
And
God.
then it must have been about 97, 98. Then we actually did some streaming, but it was too early because most people did not have the type of internet you need in a home to really support it. You had to have almost a college level
Right.
quality of internet to be able to watch stuff. But we crashed CNN servers because so many people wanted to watch it. So we knew something was there. And then again, at that time, we tried it. We knew it was the right thing. We were always trying to adapt the newest technology at that time because we had such good success and we were getting pitched ideas all the time. But most of the ideas were about 10 years ahead of their time because none of this really started to become reality to about 2010. And it was a combination of what the quality of internet in their home and then quality of what you're doing from the site, you know, and internet capabilities in the building and stuff like that. So it was all there. We started working with it. And again, here we are. So yeah, it's quite a bit. And again, here's another guy, Bill Cunningham. After he left WCW, he, I think, went to another Turner division, and then he became the head of all IT technology for Deutsche Bank Moscow and did quite well. He's still only in his early 50s. I think he's actually retired now. Became a new father at 50 years old.
Good for him.
You know, doing the work, but the guy's just brilliant. Still stay in touch with him yet. And again, this is the stuff I'm really, really enjoying at this point in my career, being in my mid 60s, is seeing the success that these young guys had when they first, you know, when they first started with me, especially that team that we had back in the 90s. It really tells you what WCW is built off of, you know, and having all these guys who became such successes in their careers, but that's where they launched it. And still stay in touch a little bit. And it's always good back to reminisce about the stuff we did back then.
Now this Colonel eventually does become FITE TV. At what point do you make the leap?
So I worked for TNA from 2008 to 2013. I was head of marketing there.
Yeah.
And we were trying a lot of different things. So we had a guy there named Bill Banks who ran our website, and this had nothing to do with me. He had the vision there of getting videos on YouTube, predating what WWE did with YouTube.
Yeah, they were really quite good. I remember that.
Yeah, they did a great job. So I learned a lot from him on that. You know, again, at TNA, they were already doing it when I got there, but I obviously embraced it, trying to adapt to new technology. I had this new thing called Twitter, you know, and Facebook and all that social media stuff. Essentially started in like 2008, 2009, which is exactly when I started there. So we started growing from that. And I do remember, believe it or not, back to the Ohio University connection. I think everybody knows who the wrestler Abyss is, Chris Parks. Yes. Him and me both went to OU, Sports Ed, a couple of years apart. And I remember him and me going to Athens, Ohio to speak to the class, actually with Jim Kaler, who was a professor there, and say, well, you got two ways you can go out into you know, sports world profession. You can do what I do, or you could do what Chris does. And here's Chris, long hair and tattoos and
about
scars
6'5", 6'6", yeah.
Yeah, he played football at Ohio University. But yeah, he was great to work with, and frankly, he's doing quite well now as a producer for behind the scenes there for WWE. And but even then, I was already talking to students there about this was the future, is digital television. We were already scratching the surface of digital television, how it's going to take over what you're doing on cable and stuff like that. So that probably goes back to 2010, 2011. I first met a gentleman named Mike Patelis, who, while I was still at WWF, who was pitching me the streaming service, which strictly was a VOD, video on demand service at the time. I originally called iMedia Share. And got to know him there and was looking there at putting TNA library program on there, stuff like that. So we built a working relationship there. And then summer of 2013, TNA went through a lot of budget cuts, and pretty much they cut quite a few people, especially anybody who's vice presidents and stuff, and made a few bucks and things like that, because that's the point in time they decided to bring the show on the road.
Right.
And that was not a good business decision, in my opinion.
Nope.
So I started building a relationship, continuing the relationship with Michael Patelis, did some consulting, so did some test events. And that's where FITE was born from. The very, very first event ever streamed by FITE was Wrestle Kingdom #9 from Tokyo, which I did in conjunction with Jeff Jarrett. I was actually working with Jeff to do the pay-per-view distribution, because I've worked with In Demand and DirecTV and Dish. Well, Direct and Dish since the inception of Direct and Dish. And say, hey, you guys get some good technology. And their technology actually started as the capability of casting from their mobile phone to a connected TV. That was the basis. That's why it was originally called Flips there. That was the whole catalyst of the whole project, but they were just putting any kind of program and get on there, and they couldn't really put a focus on it. And we did these test events, but in addition to wrestling, we did bull riding and stuff like this too. We did for about a year, these test events. And then by the November of 2015, so almost exactly 7 years ago, we came up with the concept of FITE, getting into that vertical for many reasons. From a business standpoint, one, combat sports, boxing, wrestling, MMA have traditionally been well received as pay-per-view programming.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to do that with NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. So that was the first step. The other thing is too, the business model for pay-per-view programming is revenue share. So you're not putting up these huge guarantees and taking all this risk.
Right.
Because this whole company was started, and throughout the whole progression, only ever had $11 million in financing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there's one other business element to it. These are the things got to be, people, I think you have people listening to this podcast who's starting businesses and so forth.
Yes.
And these are things, one, the team that we had in the United States, myself included, none of us were overpaid. We bet on the common. It's a startup. Okay.
Yeah.
But you had freedoms, because you worked out of your home, obviously, is the virtual office situation. But we also had most of our team, and still to this day, probably 2/3 of our staff is based in Sofia, Bulgaria. And the economics of working on Sofia, Bulgaria are dramatically different than United States. And there's a reason I live in Akron, Ohio. My money goes a lot farther there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to live in LA or New York to do my job.
No.
Fortunately, I'm from Ohio, so I have family there and stuff like that. So it's a lot. It's really refreshing. I've worked at companies throughout the years where top executives had to make sure they're driving the fanciest cars and the newest boats and vacation homes and stuff like this. And that wasn't the culture here. It was all about building it. And so if we didn't have those two main factors, in addition to this great technology, if we didn't have the factors of not overpaying anybody, being cost efficient in the whole business model of staffing, and then going into a vertical of pay-per-view programming where you're not taking huge risk in buying rights to programming, we would never survive the first year or two. And that, I think, is a real key to where our success has become. And that was real encouraging for me, because obviously I didn't know the team from Bulgaria. I didn't know most other people when I started working there, but fortunately, by that time, I was in my mid 50s, and still, had plenty of real world experience how companies are run, and that was real refreshing to me.
Some of the folks listening are in either athletics or sports entertainment or other forms of independent entertainment. I guess one of the questions is when you're looking at a program, how does an independent show get itself from good to great? That is, if you're an entrepreneur who has a regional show or a local show, and you really want to increase your quality and you want to put yourself in a position to maybe someday be on FITE TV, what are some ways that they can get their quality up, or things that you've seen that are common errors?
So I joke with it, but sometimes I'm pretty darn serious. Learning to frickin' tell time and read a calendar, be on a schedule. GCW has been almost a textbook case of persistence, staying with it, and devoting full time. Brett Lauderdale, who's their founder and head, this is all he does. Okay. Now, not everybody has the luxury of, doing the complete bedding down. Most independent wrestling companies that I've worked with, great guys, and I really enjoy it. But most of them are vanity projects. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a hobby. They love it. They're doing it. And fortunately, most of them there's quite a few. I'm surprised how many guys who are lawyers. So they have real good jobs. And I like working with those guys because they know business, and know how they know how to tell time to read. Something so stupid as that. It's a key to success. I've had a lot of people, how do you be a success? And well, learn how to show up on time to work.
Yeah.
And that's sounds sort of stupid, but there's plenty of people just don't get that sometimes. And
Outlook and Excel are incredible tools if we use them. Yeah.
yeah. So, so I think a lot of that is this, persistence, staying with it, devoting a lot of your time to it. It's a lot of work. Fortunately, everybody at FITE from the beginning worked on it full time, and it's our passion to do it. None of us are getting rich. We're, getting paid enough to make ends meet that we weren't, taking second jobs to do it. So we weren't that, because there's sometimes startups you are that stretch.
Oh yeah.
But we weren't making big dollars from the beginning by any stretch. So and I really think that's the key to it. There's no substitution for hard work, and building relationships, not burning bridges, doing what you say. I've been talking to promoters as recently in the last 24 hours of people who are wanting to come to us. And I'm not trying here to blow our horn that we're better than anything else out there. We're not, but we're good. In that, fulfill the promises you make. If you say you're going to do something at a certain time or a certain way, do it that way. And if you can't do it that way, have a reason why you can't, and communicate it. Be transparent. That's the most overused term. It's not overused because that's really what we preach a lot in our company, is being transparent. We tell people how many people watch our show live. We know how many people are buying purchasing pay-per-view events in advance. God, what a great tool we have, something called our dashboard, where people can track their sales, keeps everybody honest. Not once I've had anybody say, oh, I'm sure I had more buys in that for my event than what you're telling me. Because no, you've been following the numbers all along with us, and it's right there, and that's my life. One less thing I've ever had to have a problem with or communication with a promoter on, and it makes it a lot easier. And not every company who does what we do does that.
Now, if a young person or not so young person wanted to go into sports marketing or sports management, of course, obviously, Ohio University graduate program would be a top recommendation. If in the event that a person couldn't, what are if we had to reconstruct it Moneyball style, what are some of the core skills and core knowledge pieces that a young person could obtain in order to really increase their ability to work in that field?
Well, you already heard me sort of point out a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Remember who you started with. And those, my class of 30 students, 4 of them are athletic directors now at schools. Chris Massaro, who's athletic director at Middle Tennessee State, was a classmate. He was president of my class. With Selig, who's the AD at Old Dominion, was a key guy in my class and stuff. So remember who you start with, and keep those relationships going. And like I mentioned, Brad Jacobs here, he's one of my first guys I did a lot of business with in boxing. And here now, 30 some years later, we, have worked with Top Rank quite a bit. He's going to the Hall of Fame. So, keep those relationships alive and well from over the years. Don't burn bridges. I see too many people doing that. Way too many people seeing, burning bridges. That, because you're going to want to work with that guy, 5, 10, and I can't believe it now, 30 years later, some of the people I deal with. There's another gentleman named Doug Jacobs who we work with almost on a daily basis. I first met him in 1989, and he does a lot of programming with us, and that we give to him and he gives to us, and it's a great, a mutual working relationship we have there. So it's a relationship building. I mean, analogies made a lot in this business is like dating and getting married. You have to really start building up relationships. And frankly, my social life is the people I deal with. I'm very happy to say probably half to 2/3 of the promoters I deal with I consider friends, and we talk about each other's families and stuff like that. So it's fun. Life's too freaking short to be too hardcore and brutal to deal with, or people don't want to talk to you or you don't want to talk to them. Because what you do in this job is, I mean, there's many days I'll talk 6-7 hours straight, which it's the way I do business. Not everybody does that, but I'll tell you, that's one other thing. If I hear from a young kid one more time, well, did you call him? Well, no, but I've been talking to him. I go, no, did you actually talk to him on the phone? Well, I sent him a text. I sent him an email. No, pick up a freaking phone, talk to him, build an interpersonal communication with them. I think it's super important. It takes a little more time sometimes, but it's how you do relationships. That's why I'm in Bulgaria right now, because I got a great team that we work with. I get along with our CEO fantastically, but a lot of that's because we take the time to sit there and break bread and talk face to face instead of just exchanging a lot of emails. Now, being based all over the world, do we get together very often? Not really, but I got to tell you, it's been very valuable getting together and getting to know each other, because our CEO and myself, we're about as different as possible from each other, but that's a fantastic thing, because there's a lot of things that I could never do that he does. And I like to think it's vice versa, because I don't think he really, he does not have the relationships or I mean, maybe the patience to deal with all the various promoters we deal with. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just, there's a lot of different people you got to deal with the production and capability and stuff like that. But there's so much he does from a technical standpoint and the sheer business end of things I could never do as well. So, I'm 20 years older than him. We're from different backgrounds. But to me, that's probably the best way there is to run a company and have two people who have such diverse, different things are background.
I guess a two-part question. In the next 3 years, what are your plans for you, and what are your plans for FITE?
It's something's been racking my brains. I'm in that weird stage. I'm 64 years old, so half, 2/3 of my high school and college buddies who I still stay in touch with. Again, it goes back to I get texts every single day. I probably have in the last hour or two from the 5 guys I started living together with in 1977 at Ohio University as an undergraduate. We still stay in touch. I think within the year, almost everybody will be retired except me. So I got a lot of peer pressure. My wife's actually a few years older than me, so she's retired. So there's a little peer pressure to retire. But obviously, I think if I go cold turkey, I'd probably be dead in a week or two. I sort of go hard into it. But personal plans is a little bit slowing down, but never really leaving the business. I'm in good health yet. I enjoy what I do and stuff like that. But I also want to, enjoy the life. I have 3 kids, and they're not toddlers because I'm way past that. But it's spend time with them and know them and family and things like that. So, we're going to continue building this company to be as big as it can. We already start doing this is branching out beyond combat sports. We feel that we have a very good reputation in the combat sports world in boxing and wrestling, MMA, Muay Thai, bare knuckle fighting, and so forth. But we did air a very successful rugby league World Cup from the UK this year. We've been doing soccer, European football. We've done motorsports and stuff, and frankly, that's also one of the focuses of why I'm here in Bulgaria. We're focusing on, okay, what other sports make the most sense to come to our platform? Now, check those boxes as it comes to, the business model that works for us. The risk reward, what it comes down to. We're not open checkbook programmers, which I do see a lot in our business here. It's not all dollars and cents. There's strategic reasons for doing it, but let's not fool ourselves, it's dollar cents.
It's got to make sense.
Well, I've seen companies go up really quick and then really down because they just open the checkbook and throw money at it. I'm again very, very happy for our company. We have not been that. It's been a slow, steady, managed growth.
And Mike, I just wanted to thank you for your time, and this knowledge is really useful for not just everybody here, but me as well as I build my business. So thank you. Can you tell everyone where they can find you and FITE TV and really learn more about your company?
Yeah, I mean, we're FITE.tv. We try to keep it simple there. Actually, that's one of the keys to the name of our company. I'm very proud to say from day one, first time we've seen the logo, it has not changed a pixel since that time. Clean, simple, to the point. I think the word fight actually is something we'll work with other type of sports programming. It's not all about combat sports, but sort of a fight every time you're on the field.
Yes.
We will stay in the sports program. We do some music. Sometimes that's a fight also.
Yeah.
Yeah, our website's FITE.tv. FITE is available on Amazon, Roku, Apple as a native app, Vizio, Samsung, LG, Philips TVs, Hisense TVs, very global around the world. United States is number one, but UK is number two, Australia number three viewership. Do very well in Germany, in Europe, but we've had purchases in over 180 countries. But FITE.tv is our website. There's no business information there, but obviously it's a good way to view it. Again, it's a good place to purchase a show. Then you can go watch a show on your 64-inch TV, watch on your mobile, watch on your laptop, watch it everywhere. Buy it at home, go to a buddy's, put your email address in there, and you guys watch the program as a group. We got a lot of great combat sports. We do about 30 to 40 live shows a week. So there's a little bit of something for everybody, from be it slap fighting to bare knuckle. We got bare knuckle from Thailand this week. Last weekend it was from Hollywood, Florida. We have Manny Pacquiao against DK Woo live from Seoul, South Korea on Saturday night, U.S. time. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're airing a press conference, we're airing a weigh-in on Friday. I think both of those are at 9 o'clock New York time. And so we have a very wide range of programming on our platform. We have now been, in the last about a year or so, year and a half ago, we were purchased by a company called Triller, who is in the final stages and getting ready to go public here over the next weeks, not months, but in weeks. We hope to see that happen, and we feel that will help bring our us to another level with resources being available to bring in that additional programming that people may not have seen. And probably one of the funniest things I'm working on right now is we're calling the 12 Days of Fight Plus. So while I've talked a lot about how we're a pay-per-view platform, we're also now a subscription platform. And only the last several months, we started putting live programming on Fight Plus. And it's a great product. So we're featuring various programming, because as you would guess, in late December, there's just not that many live events. They're not that 30 or 40 live events a week. It's maybe 3 or 4 a week. And so we're bringing back, and we're working on a little, remember the pandemic of 2020? I think a lot of people forgot. And what happened in March and April, where we literally every 15 minutes we're getting emails saying I'm canceling my show. And we're saying, okay, what the heck do we do? Well, that's actually how Fight Plus was started. And for wrestling fans, going to appreciate, hopefully to remember this, what we did for live program. Now, I got to give a lot of, to AEW and Impact Wrestling. They ran live programming every week and kept it going, and in a very, very difficult time, running from wrestling schools and closed buildings and stuff like that. But we also ran 3 days a week, 11 o'clock, live from Cambodia, OWE, Oriental Wrestling Entertainment. And I just, being a child of the 60s and 70s, every time I hear the word Cambodia, I'm thinking of Vietnam War. And we're doing live shows from Cambodia. And they were cool, fun shows. They were on a pandemic thing, but that was it, and we aired jousting. We also aired, for motorsports fans, we aired some of the biggest stars ever from the motocross, supercross world, starting with Travis Pastrana on down, and on a vacant lot that was built into a track in Youngstown, Ohio. We had about 10 racers in there and put on a great racing event there. And, nobody could go watch it. There's some people staying on a hill about a quarter mile away watching because they heard the motorcycles. So we had to be creative.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of cool programming doing there. And again, I think that was a key to our success, is that we just didn't lie down and say, okay, let's see what happens this pandemic. We said, okay, let's see what we can do to make it work, keep us relevant, because people were starving for entertainment.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We're able to come up with some things which were really off the wall. Yeah, I think I just mentioned the jousting. That was taped, but still it was jousting.
Still, it's jousting.
Yeah. I'm not real familiar with the jousting fan base, but we tried to develop one ourselves. So
Once you've got the Cambodian pro wrestling and the jousting in there,
yeah,
the creativity's on a 10. This is great.
Yeah. Michael Nee from China was just a pleasure to work with on that company there. Unfortunately, I think OWE is not in business anymore, but it was a great product they had there. And they had a guy who was Mexican, who was living in Cambodia, who was the English announcer, and it just,
oh wow,
it was fun. It was fun. And Michael Nee, who was Chinese, but I think he spent some of his youth in New York, had very good English, so they were the announcers, but they were just fun to work with. So yeah, and thanks. Yeah, it was just just different kind of stuff to work with, and that's kept us going, and where we're at having the success with today, because one of the benchmarks of our success in our company is still in 2020, and if everybody remembers Thanksgiving of November of 2020, first time people probably in their entire lives never went to go spend it with families, still were at home. And we're fortunate we aired the Mike Tyson Roy Jones fight, which still holds the record for the most digital buys for an event ever. And that really, and we had zero tech issues delivering the program. Triller put on a fantastic program, which obviously was a catalyst for us being acquired by them because we had good working relationship with us. So there's some real interesting things came out of 2020, and what we're doing right now came out of 2020. I mean, pre-2020, you just didn't do as many video calls as everybody does now.
Right.
And, people live and die by it. And I'm sure you do the same thing. And most of the people on this listening to this, are doing 6 and 7 video calls a day. Prior to 2020, you did a couple, but nothing like this. Look how big, Zoom that we're on right now. Yeah. Zoom did exist, but barely. And I think they probably grown by 10 to 100 fold in these last 2 years because of this.
It's a new world, but I'm excited. I think it's fun. So,
yeah. Well, the key to it is you always got to embrace the technology out there and keep your eyes open for what's the new technology and what's different. And not everything always works. There's things like beta, SP and Dreamcast and things like that. They didn't always work.
Pets.com and
yeah, which on paper sound pretty good. There's a couple of those, yeah. So they're before the time, some of those.
Again, I just want to say thank you very much. Again, get some rest, and and thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions, I'm sure they can post them to the site, and I'll pass them along.
Fantastic. Michael, it's a real pleasure. I appreciate having me as your guest.
Likewise, thank you.